If Shanks and Luffy don't stop Blackbeard, he's going to destroy the world by getting his hands on. By the end of this video, you'll know what I just censored. After researching, analyzing, and rereading every Shanks and Blackbeard chapter, I finally figured out Blackbeard's true goal, and it's mind-blowing. After putting all the pieces together, I finally know how Blackbeard and Shanks' story ends, with Oda foreshadowing a battle between them during Marineford. By the end of the video, you'll understand exactly what Blackbeard is after, and why I'm now 100% sure that Shanks was speaking to the Godase about Teach, how a fight between Blackbeard and Shanks will change One Piece forever, and stick around to the very end of the video for a crazy surprise that you're probably not expecting. But to understand how I fell down the rabbit hole in the first place, we need to start at chapter 1079, where it all hit me. In this chapter, we find out that Shanks has been searching for Blackbeard. Shanks specifically says, "I was sure he'd show up in Wano," meaning that the only reason Shanks even showed up at Wano in the first place was to encounter Blackbeard and face him head on. Now, I really love that Oda adds in this little detail, because now we can erase the notion that Oda was simply shoving Shanks into the end of Wano for pure film red promotion, and it gives a reason for Shanks' moves and actions, and a real tangible reason for him making Admiral Greenbow poop his pants like a newborn in Pampers. I like Shanks' calculated side to him, especially when it comes to Blackbeard, as they have plenty of history together, with Blackbeard scarring him years ago, and they are true enemies, with Blackbeard implying during Marineford when he saw Shanks that they would eventually fight. Shanks even wanted Whitebeard to stop Ace from going after Blackbeard, which makes me wonder, just how long has Shanks been hunting down Blackbeard, and how does Blackbeard manage to continually escape Shanks? If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. When Shanks went to meet with Newgate, he explained that Blackbeard's ambition was so great and his willpower was unimaginable. He warned Whitebeard that through sheer willpower, Blackbeard would aim for the Sea of the Yonko, even if it meant removing Whitebeard. Shanks was correct in the sense that Blackbeard did seek out this Yonko status, as he soon became a Yonko after Marineford during the 2-year time skip. But even more precise, Shanks was correct about Blackbeard coming after Whitebeard specifically, as we see him perform some kind of black magic ritual after he commands his own crew to shoot down Whitebeard. And I always wondered, how did Blackbeard do this? How did he get the Good no Mi for himself? I think it would be hilarious if Blackbeard just put out a pot of growing fruits, which transformed immediately into the Good no Mi, and it was that simple. He even fought Marco and the Whitebeard pirates to finally become a Yonko, and when he got his Logia fruit, he killed his own brother. Blackbeard is a complete menace, backstabbing not only his brothers but also his own adopted father, who he begged to let him on the ship. And this was the moment that I realized Blackbeard is pure evil, truly selfish, an unredeemable person, and Shanks was right. His ambition is truly endless, and his goal is to rise to the top, to create his own pirate paradise of anarchy and chaos, so he can live in a society where he isn't mocked for never showering. Blackbeard is consumed with the chaos of darkness, and this is symbolized by him being a Logia user of the darkness fruit, but he will also bring true destruction, as his second trait is symbolized through his other devil fruit, the Good no Mi. Blackbeard is a true pirate, arguably the most piratey character in all of One Piece, and he's One Piece's take on the true pirate legend Blackbeard in real life, or Edward Teach. If Blackbeard is chaos and destruction, Shanks is balance and stability. I discussed this more in detail in my greatest Shanks theory ever, that Shanks is able to reason with the Godase because he understands what they really want is a stable world, tranquility that isn't out of control and run by evil pirates. But Blackbeard and Luffy have both destroyed the stability of the One Piece world, so this can't be the only reason that Shanks and Blackbeard are at each other's necks. Luffy and Blackbeard simultaneously destroyed the reputation of the warlord system, and have both become newly fledged Yonko and some of the most powerful pirates with insane ambition. And somehow, Shanks is caught in the middle of these two. Blackbeard is the opposite to Luffy, as his Foyo, where he has very similar traits but a completely different perspective on life. The two cannot stand each other, and with Shanks liking Luffy so much, it only makes sense that he would despise Blackbeard. But the reason I bring this all up is because it almost seems like Shanks has been tied to Blackbeard as far back as we can remember. I mean, I'm sure Shanks was fighting Blackbeard even all the way back when Roger and Whitebeard pirates fought for 3 days back in the Oden flashback. That was probably the first time they ever met, fighting non-stop. So to summarize the entire Shanks and Blackbeard timeline, they first met by fighting. Then the red-haired pirates had already had some beef because Blackbeard scarred Shanks. Then we see Shanks talk to Whitebeard about Blackbeard and warn him about his ambition. And in Marineford, Blackbeard brings up their destined clash. Finally, now in Wano, we see the trend continue once again, with Shanks looking for Blackbeard and trying to confront him, saying he was sure he would have been in Wano. But putting all the pieces together, why am I now 100% sure that Shanks spoke to the Godase about Blackbeard?
ある海賊について話が。
Well, if we want to consider Shanks' statements on Blackbeard's ambition, we can assume that Shanks is onto Blackbeard because of his end goals and he wants to prevent Blackbeard's evil plans. Shanks went into Wano after speaking to the Godose about this certain pirate, so we can assume whatever Blackbeard was planning on doing in Wano is what they were discussing. And what could the most evil, most ambitious man have to do with Wano? Well, when you put it this way, it's quite obvious and simple, since during this time when Shanks arrived, it was also when we had just learned something insane, because we had just found out that Wano was holding the ancient weapon Pluton. Yes, of course this all makes sense. Of course Blackbeard's goal is to acquire Pluton. Pluton is intrinsically tied to Wano, and what could be more ambitious than this? But before I tell you more about Blackbeard and why he's going after Pluton, make sure to subscribe if you're not already. We have a bunch of power scaling videos coming soon and plenty of theories involving Luffy and the history of the Monkey D family. So hit that bell like Luffy and Skypiea to be notified and never miss a single video. The ancient weapon of the underworld is waiting to be awakened. I believe Shanks and the Godose are so concerned with the idea of Blackbeard getting his hands on this doomsday weapon. But how did Shanks learn about this being Blackbeard's goal? Well, maybe Kuzan was the one who told him, as Kuzan is now working with Blackbeard. Is it possible that Kuzan talked to Shanks about him going after the ancient weapons? We know Kuzan shows up and tells people things in person after traveling the perilous seas on his ice bike. So if he did tell Shanks, it wouldn't have been traced by Blackbeard. After all, his homie Sal's chilling on Elbaf, which we now know is Shanks' territory. It's just one possibility, but it does seem Shanks has put a bit of time and energy into keeping tabs on Blackbeard, so it's likely his entire crew and maybe his entire fleet is keeping an eye and ear out for information on Blackbeard. The thing about Blackbeard that makes him such a concern for Shanks and why he even brought him out to the Godose in the first place is because Shanks knows Blackbeard's true nature. He knows that Blackbeard is the one person who's crazy enough to get his hands on the ancient weapon, and even worse, he's insane enough to use it for evil and destruction. Shanks highlighting Blackbeard's ambition and hunger for chaos is the key here, as Blackbeard would even consider using it against random islands and the world government itself, which might be why Shanks thought it was important to speak to the Godose about it. And here's an interesting idea. What if the world government also know about Pluton's existence in Wano? Maybe Shanks told them, but maybe they've always been researching and investigating Wano. In Water 7, we find out that the world government is seeking the ancient weapons. And similar to in Water 7, they send CP0 members to Wano to constantly deal with Kaido and Orochi in secret. These CP0 members may have been looking into Pluton. We saw them send world government ships, which were separate from Green Bull and the Marines in chapter 1037 when we first see Zunisha come into Wano. So maybe they were planning on infiltrating Wano to look for Pluton all along. During the Water 7 saga, it was clearly stated by Frankie, Iceberg, and CP0 that Nico Robin had the power to reawaken Pluton. And just like I mentioned, CP0 and Wano investigating the weapon that we know the world government's after, we see a parallel to Ina's lobby where the orders are to eliminate Nico Robin. It seems out of place, it seems random now, but looking back at it, with this theory in mind, it all makes sense. Kaido announced they would go after the ancient weapons with the new Onigashima project. So is it possible that the world government was afraid of Luffy, or even worse, Kaido winning and forcing Robin into this action? But more likely than all of these options, the world government wanted Nico Robin alive, as Lucci orders them to capture her and they don't specify the kill. The world government and CP0 going after Nico Robin and Wano seems like a minute random detail because it was overshadowed and forgotten when Luffy transformed into Gear 5. After this, the world government quickly shifted their focus to Luffy, and when the Straw Hats already having Poseidon in Shirahoshi, Pluton being at Wano, it makes you wonder about Uranus. Is it possible that Shanks has Uranus and he's guarding it from anyone insane like Blackbeard? Another possibility could be Dragon. What if Dragon, who's now in a war with the world government, actually has Uranus? I mean, he's going to need some serious firepower, and he too was after Nico Robin for the longest time, calling her the light or the flame of the revolution. I wouldn't be surprised if he was actually interested in awakening the weapons and using them to destroy the celestial dragons. A while ago I made a video on the Rock's pirates, and I speculated that Rock's got his hands on the ancient weapon Uranus and threatened to destroy the world government at God Valley. My headcanon was that he awakened it and found it at God Valley, but when the Rocks realized that they were going to lose, Zebek realized he didn't want to allow the world government to gain access to the weapon, so he commanded Whitebeard to destroy God Valley after either sinking it or shooting it up into the sky like a knock-up stream, taking Uranus and Roxy Zebek with it. And maybe this is why Kaido sees Whitebeard as a traitor and a backstabber because he doesn't have the full context of what actually happened. And with Blackbeard having many strange connections to rocks, for example, he has the Will of D, the Saber of Zebek being his ship, he gathered a stacked crew of powerful pirates and making Hachinos to his base. If I'm anywhere near right in saying rocks had access to the ancient weapon, this might be how Blackbeard learned about the ancient weapons in the first place. Just like a drunk Whitebeard would tell stories about the gods referencing Lunarians, he may have also brought up the ancient weapons at one point. Even if these drunk memories aren't from God Valley, Roger did tell Whitebeard what he learned when he found the One Piece. We know Whitebeard didn't want to find the One Piece, and maybe part of this is specifically because he had no interest in the weapons and using them. We can see Blackbeard recognize Lunarians when he faced the Mihawk Seraphim, and you can see this almost instinctual shock and fear in their existence when noticing the white hair, the wings, and dark skin, proving he's heard the similar stories that Marco learned from Whitebeard. So maybe it's a stretch to assume that Blackbeard initially learned about the weapons from Whitebeard, but it's just one of the many possibilities that could have inspired him to seek the weapons out and see their power for himself since he was a child. Blackbeard is also a historian. In fact, Oda once said in a SBS that if Blackbeard wasn't a pirate in the real world, he'd be an archaeologist. Blackbeard is intrigued with history and enjoys studying it, but with him being so important, I would expect someone like him to be interested in the Void Century history, poneglyphs, archaeology, just like Nico Robin and the Straw Hats have learned about Pluton from the poneglyphs. Is it possible that Blackbeard simply learned about these weapons from traveling alongside the Whitebeard pirates and researching on his own? We already know Blackbeard is a devil fruit enthusiast, so there's one example of him being obsessed with these strange mysteries of the world. Blackbeard is a man with a plan to achieve his dreams. Just like he knew he wanted a very specific devil fruit, he might want a very specific ancient weapon. And Blackbeard would be the perfect person for Oda to choose to awaken the ancient weapon for many reasons. So is it possible that Blackbeard returns to Wano? Because now after confirming from Caribou that Pluton is there, I could see him invading Wano in a final war. This would also finally put Luffy directly against Blackbeard as well.
Baby, that's what I've been waiting for.
In a way where Luffy and Blackbeard are now in a war against each other. We know how much Luffy values his friends, and him making Wano his territory makes it where Blackbeard attacking is an unforgivable attack against the Emperor. And it would be a good reason to set up Luffy versus Blackbeard from a plot perspective, since we already have it set up from the character standpoint. Luffy wants to become but I think Blackbeard is so greedy, so selfish, and so ambitious that he wants to take it a step further and conquer the entire world. And now that you know why Shanks is so adamant on stopping Blackbeard, how will their story and fight play out? I can see Shanks telling the Straw Hats about Blackbeard's goals and ambitions after we see him when Luffy visits Elbaf. In fact, I can see Elbaf being the location of the final war, or at least the beginning of it, since Elbaf is located in War Land. And if red-haired Shanks has the final rope poneglyph, it might be a scenario where Blackbeard is finally forced to confront him head on. I could see Blackbeard versus Shanks playing out where Shanks overwhelms him with his haki, but this might also be where we finally see Blackbeard's awakenings in true power. I do think Blackbeard has strong haki, not on the level of Shanks and Luffy, but respectable since he was able to scar Shanks before his devil fruits, and Shanks hypes up his willpower, which is essentially haki. I think Blackbeard will have strong haki, but not to their level because he relies too much on other ways of doing things, which in turn means that he hasn't trained up his haki to the extent they have. It would be pretty cool from a narrative perspective if Shanks was able to scar Blackbeard in their fight. Blackbeard is a Logia, so it would be tough, but paying back the scar that Blackbeard gave him all those years ago would be a cool twist. It's also interesting to see if Blackbeard can combine his two devil fruit attacks into one, because this attack would be insanely powerful and possibly Blackbeard's strongest move. And going more into how Blackbeard and Shanks are opposites, Blackbeard is slow, greasy, and fat, and Shanks is what I call the fastest character in all of One Piece. I mean, seriously, after chapter 1079, I don't want to hear any more Lucky Roo is faster, or Kizaru is the fastest, or Sanji. Can we just accept that God King Shanks is the fastest character in the entire story? Despite Shanks being so overwhelmingly fast, I think in the back of our minds we understand that it won't really matter. I mean, Blackbeard having his Darkness Devil Fruit can potentially distort speed with gravity altering black holes. When he was facing Law, he took one of the biggest hits, and with his Devil Fruit the damage was multiplied, but he still got back up and fought even more. And this might be why Blackbeard hates fighting strong opponents and why he seems like a coward. He's not afraid in the sense that he'll lose, but he's afraid from the insane PTSD and absurd pain that he feels being amplified every time he fights. Think about Zoro in that nothing happened moment, but Blackbeard's getting hit with this every single time. I think somehow Blackbeard will disprove Kaido's philosophy that haki is supreme, because for a while now everyone's accepting this as a fact. But if anyone could show us otherwise, it would be Blackbeard, since he has multiple devil fruits. I wouldn't be surprised if Blackbeard ends up killing Shanks, or if Shanks sacrifices himself in their fight, stopping Blackbeard from destroying the world completely. And this brings me to Blackbeard awakening Pluton. He could command Sanwan Wolf to pull Pluton out of Wano, or he could use the Gura Nomi to push it out by shifting the tectonic plates. And everything from here on out is just how I imagine this entire situation playing out. Once Pluton is in the hands of Blackbeard, he would start off by one-shotting a random island, similar to the Dead Star scene in Star Wars, and then you'd see him laughing like a crazy madman with a terrifying Blackbeard will aim straight for the world government after flexing his new power, and this might be where we see Franky return to Water 7 and create the new anti-Pluton. After all, the original was created in Water 7, so it's only right. While all of this is going on, Blackbeard will continue to face off against the combined efforts of Marines, world government, and anyone standing in his way as he makes a charge towards Mary Joa. Blackbeard will use the Gura Nomi to split the earth. He will launch tsunamis at the world government and use the Darkness Fruit to engulf the entire island of Mary Joa into darkness as he conquers the Holy Land. If Whitebeard had the power to destroy the world, Blackbeard has the balls to actually do it. And this moment during Marineford where Sengoku says this might be foreshadowing, because Whitebeard has control and was a way more reasonable person, but Blackbeard is completely insane and his ambition completely surpasses Whitebeard's goals. He'll test his strength to the fullest capabilities, using the Gura Nomi's full power on display in pure destruction, while Pluton is simultaneously wreaking havoc. Blackbeard will be destroying continents with one hand and devouring the world into darkness with the other. And it even makes me wonder, could he potentially split the Red Line apart? And how much force would it take as he does this legendary feat? No one can stop him until the red-haired pirates finally show up and slow him down enough for Franky and the Straw Hats to arrive with the anti-Pluton. Blackbeard's Pluton launches a giant laser beam which is enough to take out an island, but Shanks manages to somehow slice through this insane immense power, destroying the blast completely. This takes a severe amount of energy and hockey, but eventually after blocking these island-feeded attacks, Blackbeard joins the battle as Shanks is getting in the way of his ambitions. Now Shanks and the red-hair pirates are facing Blackbeard, Pluton, and the Blackbeard pirates all together, and while they fight for a while and are on even terms, eventually Blackbeard comes in and gets Pluton to launch another attack at the islands while they're fighting, and Shanks has to leap in at the last second, sacrificing his entire body. Blackbeard finally puts a nail in the coffin and finishes off Shanks, as the red-hair pirate is now dead. While all hope seems lost, the Straw Hats finally arrive and it's too late. Luffy now prepares for their final battle, which will determine the true king of the pirates. He's enraged by seeing Shanks on the ground, and he sends Franky and his crew to deal with Pluton and the other Blackbeard pirates. In the beginning, Luffy is running across the platforms, but Blackbeard uses the Gura Nomi to destroy any type of footing he has, so Luffy jumps into Gear 4 Boundman and begins soaring around, landing huge punches, clashing with Blackbeard's Gura Nomi infused quake punches and splitting the heavens. The force is so large that they both fly back, and Blackbeard begins laughing with a crazed laugh once again, and brings up how this fight is destined just like the one with Daze. Remembering his dead brother, and now with Shanks dying to Blackbeard, Luffy takes his fight against this evil monster more seriously than ever. This funny Joy Boy persona turns into a terrifying smile that worries Blackbeard. It's his first time seeing it in person. Gear 5. Luffy more than anyone does not play around when it comes to his friends, so this will make Blackbeard Luffy's best fight from a narrative perspective, as it's Luffy's most personal battle, as he was responsible for Shanks' death, the man who inspired Luffy to become a pirate in the first place. Blackbeard would unleash the full darkness upon the world, and I also think Blackbeard would create a solar eclipse during this fight, symbolizing him swallowing up the sun god or the world's hope. But while all this seems lost and it seems as Blackbeard has devoured Luffy in darkness, Luffy's Gear 5 sun god emerges and finishes off Blackbeard with the full combined force of an attack that is as hot as the sun. A punch so powerful that it is charged with more Conqueror's haki than a battering gun. Luffy yells, "Shanks was my friend," as his fist is oozing with advanced haki, and the multiplied force and pain is so much that Blackbeard is knocked out, becoming unresponsive due to the pure shock. The battlefield is completely destroyed due to Blackbeard and the war going on between the two Plutons, and as everything is crumbling, Luffy escapes with the Straw Hats and the surviving red-hair pirates. Franky finally launches a final attack against Pluton and the Blackbeard pirates, and they begin to sink into the ocean, becoming the first ever time we see a character die from a devil fruit drowning. If you like this video or anything I said, leave a like and click on this God Valley mega theory to find out why Blackbeard will kill Law, why Shanks could be the son of Rocksteady Zebek, and why Eno could be from God Valley.